Hey, welcome everyone to the Agency Sessions. I'm Jason Fischer, and we decided to unveil our vision to Omaha with some of the best and brightest minds in the community to be able to build a narrative around how we're going to build this content creator hub, one of the first of its kind here in Omaha. We've been cooking up this idea for years, and now it's time to involve you, the listeners. This podcast is your backstage pass to the journey. From the freshest voices to the classic minds, Agency unites us all. Join us from a what if to we will. These are the Agency Sessions, igniting your creativity and inspiring action. Buckle up.
So we have a person here today who goes by many titles, as many of the people that, have had a conversation with me recently. I don't want to share with anybody who she is, but I'll talk about some of her accolades, and I know I'm going to miss all of them because there's too many to the list. We run out of time, like literally. But we know they are a creative director, they are a vocalist, they are a pioneer, a mother, a mother of the community.
Come on.
And so many other things. But who are we here with today?
We are here with me. I'm Andrea Joy Pearson. And I am all of these things and more. Thank you. That last one, I have to say, maybe the first time I've heard a mother of the community. I just am actively trying to be a doer in the community and to be an artivist in the community. So an arts activist. And that really is the space of being creative in how I go about activism. So yes, it does mean literally for the creative scene, for the artistic scene. And it also means how we're being creative about going after the realities that we want to see. I have had the opportunity to get some national recognition for a few things, and I'm very, very, very thankful and grateful. And so I've been nationally recognized for strategy, specifically for speaking. I say inspirational speaking, inspiration for innovation so that we can get to our next iteration.
There you go, bars.
Hosting, and creative direction and production.
Okay.
And in addition to that, my next thing that I will receive national recognition for, I'm speaking it here and now, is for sound healing.
Into existence.
Yeah, exactly.
I heard this. I got to hear a glimpse of your show last night or maybe it was a previous show because you were showing about your experience, your sound bath experiences. That's how you and I met. It was one of these serendipitous things that I feel like is always with purpose. Just keep your eyes peeled. The answer, the opportunity is right there in front of you at times.
That's right.
Think an abundance mindset. Think of all things possible.
That's right.
And so I got, there was this thing called Creative Mornings. You can look up the video online. Andrea Joy Pearson. And I was recording it. And I had never, out of the years since Creative Mornings Omaha came to Omaha, I typically, I can't think, that's maybe one of the only times that I recorded one of the creative mornings, and it was your experience, and it just blew my mind because I think probably months before that, it was maybe pandemic wise. I'll tell you what I found. Sound baths. I think that was going viral at the time. And I think brown noise, all the different static noises and everything else, right? And so those were my two jams. I was sharing this with friends left and right, our people, because we are like, sometimes people want to medicate, and I'm like, more meditation, less medication, medication. But sometimes, hey, a little medication doesn't hurt.
Listen, it'll get you together. I'm a huge advocate of do what you need to show up as your best self, right?
Absolutely.
What does it look like for you to thrive? The first part is believing that you can thrive.
Believing that you can thrive.
Believing that you
Step
can
one.
thrive and you are worthy of thriving. You deserve thriving. And thriving is actually always sitting there waiting on you to enjoy it, to experience it, and to enhance it.
That's part. So I was thriving that day. And, you know, things were just really syncing up because I stumbled across all these things, and I stumbled across a person, Andrea, and I was just blown away by the experience. Not only the sound bath part of it, coming from a woman of color, which was really, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And dreadhead. And
that's right. Locked and loaded.
Locked and loaded. And so it wasn't just that, but it was the conversation and the dialogue afterwards of helping people understand the power of sound, the power of vibration, how people interpret sound, and even being more aware at a deeper level of the impacts of sound.
Yes.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all the things, right? I mean, if you think about anything that would get a mass group of people together, it's going to be somewhat sound related.
Generally.
Right?
Yeah.
And so sound is powerful. And so hearing you speak about that was awestruck. And so then fast forward, I get this call out of nowhere from a mutual friend of ours, Lacey Lamar. And so she's Amber Ruffin's sister. They wrote some books. You can look that up also.
That's right. Shout out, Lacey. We love you.
They say, book. So with that, it was kind of mind-blowing because Lacey is a very intentional person, and she called me out of the blue for a lunch. And it's not Lacey and I lunch all the time, dinners plenty of times, but this was very special because she said, you got to come here right now. We just ordered food. We're in Blackstone, and here's where you got to meet this person. She didn't know that we had somewhat met, but we really met them that day.
We did. And it was kind of wild actually, because we were set for lunch and it was very spontaneous and in the moment. And it, like when she mentioned it, I was like, absolutely, like call him. Like, let's see if he'll come out. Like, let's do it. Because you'll hear me talk a lot about futurism and further down the line, iterations and like spaces. And I really consider myself in my life's practice and the way I go about things, right? And the way I think through things is I'm a nowist, right? And I practice nowism. I want to know, how can we get into it right now? How can we create it right now? How can we be it in real time right now? Right? Sure. And so this was something that I didn't shy away from at all. No. I enjoy spontaneity. I think it also helps I have ADHD. I enjoy spontaneity. Okay. And so in that, I was like, absolutely, bring him out. And since then, I mean, you know, it's just been grand.
It's been life-changing. So again, I think everybody that I've spoken with has just kind of had a vibration with me and had a vibration with each other. And I want to talk about this conversation that we had before we talked about what we were about to talk about.
Okay.
And that'll be a perfect segue into everything else.
All right.
What you described a place and a space to me, and it came out of nowhere. And this is why Lacey called, because you were talking about, we just need a place like this in Omaha. Describe the characteristics. We won't say, but describe what this space and place was that we were discussing. Yeah.
So a little bit in that, I don't know if I can describe it exactly. It was a little while ago.
No, I don't need it.
And I will say that there is a clear need for certain spaces that I think are missing from the field that we have available to us right here in North Omaha.
100%.
And you heard me saying earlier, I am an artivist. So I'm thinking about how do the arts thrive and how does the community thrive, right? That activism piece. How does the community really thrive? And one of the spaces that it was very clear to me is missing, and even from a strategic point when you're talking about community growth, is a space for people to commune together, a space that is hyper flexible, a space that you could do multiple different types of things inside of the space, particularly for creatives, right? A space where creatives can come to play, a space where creatives can come to create. And in that space of digital media is something
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Because we got a union, right? That's a creative space. We got a NOMA, we got that. But this is different, as you said, for digital creatives.
Yeah, a multi-purpose creative space, right? So things for like photographers, videographers, for producers who want to come. We don't actually have a space like that that exists whatsoever. We actually don't even have a space for visual artists, for like painters, right? So that's not something that you will regularly see even at the union, right?
Sure.
And the reason that this was something that really popped out to me is because I'm a multidisciplinary artist, and one of the things that I do is actually painting, right? And I say I create visual noise. So you hit me the right way when you, I say it impacted me the right way when you said something about brown noise, right? That's actually probably my next painting that I'm going to do is one that is brown noise focused. So I love this. I feel like you re-instigated me to say like, you know what, make some time in the next couple of weeks to do this.
Okay. I want to see what brown noise looks like.
Exactly. Like what does noise look like, and how do we play with sound in our day-to-day lives?
Yep.
And in this, though, a space where we are able to come in to create, particularly in these digital environments, so that it's things that are like all creativity, you're speaking to your experience, right? Yeah. So having things that are digitized is now the new form of our history, right? Like certain styles of creativity are the new age historians.
This is true.
And I think it's essential to make sure that if you are expressing yourself in a form that could also speak 10 years from now, 15 years from now, the history of what something is, you do want to have a voice, have a hand in leadership of what does that look like? What does it sound like? What are you choosing to focus on? And what communities are you serving in the creation that you make? So there's the side of, yes, I create for me, right? I create so that I simply express myself.
Sure.
And then there are certain avenues where you say, I create for me and, right? And it's really important to know what that and is. And, you know, I'm a creative director and producer, and I absolutely adore working with creative teams. And I like to create a lot of freedom in spaces. And in that, I'm not someone that's like, oh, you're this role? Only talk about that, okay? Unless it's that, we don't want to hear your voice, okay?
We've heard those people.
Oh, they exist. Oh, absolutely. No. They absolutely
100%,
exist. They expect 100%. You to only bring in what they have you on the books for to bring in, right?
Yep.
I'm of the mindset that people as a whole, we each have so much value, much value. And when you are on a creative team, you are one team, and that is that, right?
Couldn't say it better.
And I mean, that is just that, right? It's like a soccer team or a baseball team.
Sure.
But you're just going to have a different outcome at the end, right? But you're one team, and it should feel, to me, I think, as an open, inviting, and welcoming space for knowledge sharing throughout that experience. Because I think that when people get together, and this just isn't for a movie production, right? Or a short film, or a piece of art. You know, life is art, and art is life, and so it's that same mindset with anything. How are you being a team with anyone that you're producing something with, so that everyone feels valued in that space?
Yeah. And I feel like that's the part that you hit right on, you know, the head of it. If this were a nail, you slammed it in, because it really comes to a point, if you had a space in place, kind of like with some of those segments for photographers, for videographers, for producers, for visual painters, for, you know, dancers even, right? If it's all in but we're putting some of the best out there, we're going to walk and talk and communicate and run into each other in a good way in a community.
Yeah.
What are you working on? What's going on with this?
Yeah.
What's in that room over there?
And how to collaborate.
And how to collaborate.
And how do we collaborate,
and
right?
so you're going to have Andrea Joy Pearson over here talking to youth. You're going to have Rod Conyers. You're going to have Ben Gray. You're going to have all different people who are professionals in different creative spaces to help give guidance. And I could only imagine what type of explosive, in a good way, good that would like just put out there in the universe, because now it's magnified.
It grows.
Too.
It grows.
It's online, right? Yeah. So right, and so then it's magnified too.
So that's the thing. So once I can put a pin in that, let's pop back and pop right back into it, right? And so what I was saying is like, yes, the power of creativity, right? And everyone can have a voice on some level. And so when I run productions and creative teams, saying you can give your insight, your input, a suggestion that you have. I mean, I want to hear it, right? Sure. And in that, one of the things that I will say is why, right? So any idea that you have, be ready for me to ask why. Like, why? Like, what's the thing behind that? What do you think it does? What do you think you're amplifying? Because it's really important with all of your art, to any creatives out there, and that's all of us because we're all creatives. How and why are you doing what you're doing is important. It's the priority. Why are you doing? What do you want to amplify?
Know your why.
Right? Yeah. Know your why. Know what you're wanting to amplify. And that will automatically put you in so much greater alignment. Okay. Unpin. Digital things. Yeah. The reason I'm such an advocate about the digital space specifically is, one, it's important to know for anyone who may be listening to us, my first entry point into the arts was through classical music. Okay. I have a background in opera. Okay. And am a professionally trained opera singer. And that's very live performance generally, right? Like it's like you creating these like rather spectacular moments and doing spectacular things, and you got to be there really to experience it. You really got to be in the space 100%. To really experience it.
It's so immersive.
Even in that space, I'm a huge advocate for digitizing. And in this though, what's really beautiful about digital experiences, even from live experiences, is that you can captivate an audience that's not in the room. Okay. Right? Okay. Which gives you infinite potential. You could be doing something in Omaha, Nebraska. Sure. That someone in Tokyo, Japan is now able to be a part of. Tokyo? Can be a part of something that you made, and it can move them, and you can start something ravishing no matter really where you are. And that level of freedom is, as a freedom advocate, it means everything. And it also means that you are not isolated or controlled or put inside of a container of just what your physical space is around you. It lets you be broader, wider, bigger. It lets you be able to influence and impact a much wider audience and cast a wider net to find the people who support you, the people who see what it is that you're bringing to the forefront, and to really be able to start a movement in a unique way.
And that's exactly what I mean, is like there tends to be, and you've traveled all over. Where's the last place you probably called home?
The last place I called home, well, depends on how long you have to be somewhere to call home. So the last place where I stayed that I called home for a moment is I actually was just in the Netherlands for a little bit, about a month and a half ago. And it was a rather lovely experience, like seeing the space. I work with architecture firms and urban planning and development firms. And in that, seeing how they have built community was...
Netherlands is amazing.
Oh, it was really beautiful, the intention that was behind certain things. Okay. And the opportunity to have a peaceful existence, because a lot of the things that you need are right there around you. It was magical, and I experienced some art while I was out there too.
I mean,
and performed while I was out there.
Yeah, you did. I mean, I heard some of the legend of more of your journeys.
And that's that nowism. That's that nowism.
And you did it. And it was interesting because we shared that separately. But I had went to the Netherlands for art and creative stuff. Yes. But yours was sound way more lit than mine. But
there's different. There's different.
But no. The Netherlands for me definitely would have been, I'd love to call Netherlands home one day. But I want to have that point to where it's like, why can't, and like you said, we can have that global impact.
Yeah.
And I could only imagine if we had a bunch of youth and young adults and people in general that all had a space and place like this to vibrate their energy throughout the universe, and they're getting, it's almost like a sports camp, but for all the digital creatives, right?
Oh, I love that.
If you really think about it, this would be like the NFL or, the NBA of creatives, because places like this they don't exist. And the ones that I do know somewhat exist, they're like kind of splintered. They're not really in a whole hub, and they're not really layered onto the media part, which is the part I kind of shared with about how, we wanted to digitize tape media because that was the disconnect. We got, I just found an article today. I'll share it with you later, but in short, it was just talking about, and it was from 2019. So but they were saying how media, like print media, newspapers, that kind of archaic thing, and
go to newspapers. Okay, I like reading a good newspaper article.
And you gotta have different
physical
forms
print
of media
right now.
Yeah, and you gotta have, so they got that, but I'm saying like the print, like before it went online, pre-90s to the news stations are doing an abysmal job at having any systems in place with any continuity of archival. Okay. So now if we archive that and have everything else, these kids are just going to eat it up. We won't tell them it's history, but they're going to look at it as, like they typically do, as media, newfound media. It's lost media right now is what they call that. And then, so you layer that on top of their performance, their arts, their culture, their entertainment, their, all the things that media can be, because that's just the medium. Now all of a sudden it's a whole nother layer of self-exploration and finding what's within themselves and their own agency, of course. And
I mean, that's a big one. That's a big one. I almost don't even know. I don't even know if I can just easily let that pass, right? Like having the agency, and like I spoke about it without saying that word earlier, right? Like having that voice, having that opportunity to be a leader in what is being said about a space, about a place, about a community, about the history, about what has happened to a people, about what it is that you want to see happen for a people, and simply just letting your imagination roam, because you matter, you have value. Right?
Absolutely.
And having that sense of agency to say, here's what I think is valuable, here's what I think is viable right now, and here's what I think is for the betterment and for the good of ... Right. And I think you're right. There's not a lot of places where there are these art houses, is what I might call it, just for ease in the moment. But like art houses where you do have a lot of different types of works coming out of the house. And it's something that's also open from like professional level all the way to amateur.
Absolutely.
Someone who's just like delving in, diving in, just seeing if it's something that they like, but also creating like super high end content, right? You don't see it that much. You really don't, especially that's oriented for Black people.
No. I want that focus to be on there. And I thought about this, and I thought, as you say, for Black people, no, you won't. You won't even see it for any people really as a collaborative collective. And so I thought, if there's a focus on, like, if we want to close that cultural gap, and also like we share our culture so much, it's also often duplicated or imitated, but never duplicated.
That's right.
And so with it being imitated a lot, we share our culture, and a lot of people want to be a part of our culture.
Yeah.
It's huge, right? It's our biggest export.
Oftentimes they want the culture, but not necessarily the people.
Not the people,
right?
Yeah, that's tough. And so I think a space and a place, if you have it focused on Black media and culture, entertainment, journalism, right? All these things, and we can have others come in and like engage in that, it will give them a realistic sense, an authentic sense of versus only seeing the lens of what they see through controlled media outlets. You know, and then that gets to be a point to where learning comes from another thing. But for ourselves specifically, it is the agency of seeing what's already there. It is the agency to create their own narrative or change some narratives. There's that generational gap right now because it wasn't. Now I have to stress that the media not being digitized wasn't geared, like a lot of times it can be weaponized where it's just not important, you know, that Black people did this, so we won't digitize their media. No, the powers that be, you know, the main media news outlets weren't doing their own digitization of their media. So when we got Ben Gray's 30 years of tapes, like physical tapes back, they hadn't done their own. So it wasn't just Ben. They were kind enough to share those back with us. Thank you, Hearst Media. And so with that in mind, we were able to digitize and start that process and go down that journey. And when I look back at some of these, the wildest thing is like in Ben, he lived that. It's kind of like watching one of our elders tell us a story about something that they fought for so hard at a part in their time when everybody was struggling to get to where we're at now, and we're just take it for granted in a sense, or we just think that's what it is.
That's just how it was, or just how it is. And like, you know, anytime you think about, oh, this is just how it is, I would offer this up. Be willing to take a moment and to ask yourself, how did it end up just like it is? Where did it begin?
Where did it begin?
Where did it begin?
Find the beginning, because a lot of times it's not going to be what you thought it was.
Yeah, and everything has a history.
Sure,
everything has
internet's
a history.
already. The internet's always been around. We'll go look and see how, like, this is in ancient Egyptian times. The pyramids where they invented the internet. You know, and I think that disconnect on, and that's what's happened is
history matters.
History matters. It does, and I think at times a lot of our youth are hungry for it. At least that's what I hear, is they're very hungry for it. But they hear the typical stories. They don't hear the everyday stories, and so then it doesn't feel very like everybody's not going to be a Martin Luther King. Everybody's not going to be a Sojourner Truth. Every now it's going to be a Harriet Tubman, and such.
Come on, shout the names out.
Right.
Okay.
So
we lift you up.
There you go, Hotep. And so I'm kidding. I'm not a Hotep. Disclaimer here.
If you are out there, that's okay
not
too.
Not a shot at the Hotep. I just don't want to. I don't want to falsely claim something I am not.
Right.
I want to properly represent. But the thing is that history does matter. But that was the narrative, because Ben had ran for office for 12 years. Kids that were 18. They didn't know about Ben Gray's 30 years of his journalism.
Well, because how would you know?
Exactly.
If no one tells you,
if it's not
how
online,
would you know?
And even if someone
even if it was online, how would you find it? Like,
no, they
online,
would find it. They would find it because someone's going to dig that up. No, they would.
Everybody's going to dig.
Years,
That's the thing. Everybody's not going to dig. So it's like you have to make stuff easy. You have to make it easy to find.
I agree with that, but when you're a public office, people will dig that up.
Young people?
Because I think it will bubble up to young people, but I think his people who want to point out, like, this is who you're really going to be, voting for, is the person who was knocking at this police officer. He's not really for the police. They're going to come up with any narrative they want and try to dig through that media, and then all of a sudden it will become relevant of like what else is out there. That's typically what I imagine. But
you mean if somebody's like running in real time?
Exactly.
Okay, I thought you meant just in general hearing Ben Gray's name and searching for him. And going through the archive.
I think that would come up just because he was in public office. He's an exclusive example, or kind of a rare example of someone that had 30 years of media. So imagine you were a social influencer for 30 years. Man, a person can't even be a brand new musician, or they'll go back and find, music artists. Well, this Usher said this back in 2002.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
And you're like, Usher was like 12 back then, and he was an idiot. He could sing great.
Well, and I think that's it. I got no parts on that.
No.
In that though,
I'm saying
I think though, no, but I think though, like that kind of stuff is relevant if you're creating or you're making or you're visible in that moment.
Sure.
And I think, though, you heard me saying, like, how do we make it easy? I think that
accessibility is 100%.
Yeah, I think communities, we have a responsibility to educate ourselves and to say what education then matters to this community, and highlighting leaders, right? So someone who's given their life to public service, right? For 3 decades, for 30 years of time, it should be a household name.
And
whether you were around during that point, whether you were alive during that point, or whether you even lived in the space during that point, you should know the people who have come.
And I say yes, but it is accessibility. So it's kind of like yes but like, how would they know it wasn't Ben's life or other people like Ben? Ben's just an example.
Yeah.
I just don't want to say this isn't about just Ben Gray. It's just the culture of, if someone that was like the original social influencers I call Ben, if he was doing this for 30 years, what other people and every other stories and everything else that were for 2 years, 5 years, that did a huge impact? You got Brenda Council, you got, all these other people that we know about, and we don't know the burden that they bared to get us slight progress.
Yes.
I mean, I've had a building in North Omaha, and I seen the changes, and I didn't realize. It got me more interested how big city council was involved, because Ben being in District 2, but I didn't realize all the decisions that were made by city council and impactful to my small building, because there would be all those things. But just real quick, what I'm getting to is that, as your point is accessibility, and if we digitize all these things and we do these things, which we're in the process of doing some of them, then all of a sudden now it's accessible. And it has to be in a space and place. And then it can be in, now I know this person. But to your point, why would anybody know who Ben was? And the narrative got to be Ben was just a politician, because in their lifetime, it's like Ice Cube. Ice Cube is a perfect example of, if you knew Ice Cube, when I knew Ice Cube, he was the gangster rapper.
Right.
He was the guy.
But he had a lot of iterations. He had a lot of different phases.
And he had the phases.
Yeah.
So there's the funny skit that goes on. What's the cartoon where it's the black cartoon? Oh gosh. And they would but the kid says Ice Cube. And his dad was like, he was the scariest dude ever. You thought he was going to do a drive-by and all these different things. Yeah. He was representing, NWA, and you can look that up, but you would never in your life, and the kid, his son was like, you mean the guy that makes family movies?
Yeah.
And that's the kid's understanding. The child's understanding was that Ice Cube was the guy who made family movies. That's all he knew Ice Cube as. Yeah. But then his dad knew him as a gangster rapper.
And he probably knew him as a gangster rapper. And
later on,
he had also seen that he had made kid movies and things like
but it's mind blowing, right? But you realize people aren't one dimensional.
Yes.
People can have, how you said, iterations. They can have growth. They have phases. You know what I'm saying? If you didn't have, come on, there was Happy Days and there was all the white shows to where it had all the bike riding, knife, shooting, everybody wanted to be a cowboy. And then you got to a point where you became the family person, so you weren't going to be probably living that life. Not everybody grew up to be Sons of Anarchy. You know what I'm saying? So that's just a translation for other cultures to realize, like, there are iterations of our lives, and we forget sometimes.
Where did it start? Most things that you see in front of you did not just appear in that moment, and people included, right? People go through transformation, people go through changes. And one example that I'll give, which is a big example of one of the reasons that I'm here in Omaha and that I came to Omaha, is the life and legacy of Malcolm X. Malcolm X is such a clear, and if you're willing to read, you're willing to look, you're willing to find out a little bit more, to see the different iterations as an individual and a human that he went through, and then realizing that we all go through different phases and different moments where we have different priorities in our lives, different passion points in our lives, and different things that we feel like is pushing and fulfilling our purpose, right? Sure. And that
in
goes,
that moment,
that goes for an individual. So if it goes for one individual, it certainly matters for a community.
Anyone,
and
right,
in
all
that
of us.
space of accessibility, one thing that I wanted to go back on is when you were talking about public office and the power of public office, and saying, I didn't even realize like how city council impacted me in my space. So like in something like agency, I think it's essential that when you have art hubs that are in the space of creation and are in the space of giving people a voice and giving people awareness of their power, right, is letting that be multidimensional. And one of those things being, and I've been an advocate about this for a long time, some that are listening will be like, well, you should just do it then. An advocate for a long time of feeling like we need to make politics and such more accessible, right? And more easy to understand what happens in what spaces and kind of when, so that you can actually be an active participant, because it's more than just a presidential election, right? And it's important that not just a couple of people understand who's on city council and what city council does. It's actually rather essential that everyone kind of has a baseline understanding so that they can be an active participant in their lives. And in this, earlier, I think I mentioned that I work with urban planning and development firms. And I recently was working with Spark and Fabric Lab, and we had some different programming that happened for the community. And one of the big things for that, shout out to Fabric Lab, shout out to Spark, that we were talking about and wanting all of this programming to really culminate in was people having an understanding of a little bit of what urban planning and development is, and which is just intentionally planning spaces and places, right? Really. And in this, having everyday people, all of us, realize that we are urban planners. We're all urban planners, and we all get to have a hand in impacting what our community looks like, how our community shows up. And that's the same thing you're talking about when you are talking about what is it that you're filming, what is it that you're creating, and why, and how does this impact people for them to have a sense of agency about who it is that they are, where it is that they are, where it is that they came from, and where it is that they're going. And not even capping it and saying, well, we want you to talk about this and we want you to talk about that. Yeah, that's part of it, but opening it up and saying, what do you want to talk about? What do you think matters and why?
And I think that's the real kind of, as you said, finding where it started for a lot of us is just having fun.
Yeah.
Having fun is,
it'll lead you right where you need to go.
It will lead you right where you need to go. That's the song. Having fun, leave you right where you need to go. Boop, boop. So that's the song, that's the jam, and it really is, because that's your compass. It's the most fluid part of ourselves. It's like dreaming. It's like being in a kind of like euphoric type of mindset where fun will just automatically tell you what you're really interested in. And I do this all the time, working with youth when I've done like some filming, and there's so many different positions. We got lights, we got camera, we got audio, we got, all the different elements. We got all the hardware that goes along with it.
See, and that's a whole thing in itself. A lot of times people don't know what it takes to make the things. There's a lot of people that are there to make the things well beyond who you see on screen.
And that's what I wanted. That's what I realized real quick with these kids when they didn't realize that there's a lot of parts that make the thing a thing. They didn't realize when you're watching the credits and you're looking at all these different titles and all these different companies and all these different things that make up their favorite movies and their favorite productions, that's what it is. So we do this, and I would throw just everybody wherever they're at. I would ask first, and I would say, who wants to do this? Who wants to do that? Who wants to do the interview? Who do these things? And sometimes I would just kind of pay attention, like a good coach, a good, kind of mentor. I would look at who's the most talkative, because I wanted them to be the interview person. They love talking. So since you can talk to yourself off, Go ahead and do it. I'm not a talker.
Right.
I might be a disruptor, but I wasn't a talker. So put me behind the camera, you know, and I had the vision. I was always drawing. I was always doing that. And then I would look at some other kid and they'd be kind of like looking at, out of all the things they could look at, they'd be looking at the microphones behind the camera. So I'd see him looking specifically at that. And I was like, hey, go over there and help him out. Help that person out. And the next thing you know, I had a whole camera crew, everything top to bottom. You got the person who's just the jock and they're the muscles and everything else. I didn't want to always assume that they were the person that wanted to put the stands up. Sometimes they were good at carrying equipment back and forth. Sometimes they were the person who was the interview person, but you never know. Just keep
letting people try out different things, right? Particularly with young
it's
people, just letting them try a bunch of different stuff out.
It's a band.
Yeah.
It's a band.
Yeah.
It's a sports team. It's anything you're playing a team part, play your part.
It's a team. It's a team. And you give to the team as a whole and you give to the team as an individual, right? Yeah.
Right. And I'm much like yourself to where I would look for how I could make that team better, and I would say, hey, give me the ideas. Let me hear what you think, what you don't like. And also, too, they had to know the rules in order to break them.
That's right.
So once they know how production was done.
Be willing to break them.
Right. And that's okay. And but you got to know why it works in the first place. And if you don't understand it, even from a verbal perspective, tactily, once you edit and do things and everything else.
Well, that's how you have intention,
right?
You just breaking stuff is you just breaking stuff. Like you breaking rules and you don't even understand the purpose of the rules is not you being an intentional disruptor, an intentional game changer.
There you go.
Right? Like to do these things. And I'm a big advocate of what can exist outside of the system, right? That's change a lot of times comes outside of the system. Some of the most change comes outside of a system. And for you to make change outside of the system, you also have to have an understanding what is the system, right? And like how does the system work, and does the system do some of the things that it does, so that you can intentionally go outside. You can intentionally make changes that you think are necessary to get to where you want to go in an authentic and real way.
Gosh, I'm writing all this down. I'll tell you what, fortunately they have the auto transcription, so I'm going to be putting this down because that's like valuable game. That is valuable insight from someone who, like yourself, is a seasoned professional and creative. Yeah. And those are the people I want to surround these youth around because, again, like I learn from them. Yeah. At times, because they don't know the rules, I'll just kind of watch and see because it's what's between the lines. And sometimes, a lot of times, more times than not, I think I'm teaching them, but they're teaching me in a different ways of get out of my head about something, go try something, and maybe then put some structure to it, or just to get loose and, like you said, have some fun with it. And that fun space, I feel like, is going to be, for like a place like agency, then all of a sudden it's going to be one of these things that there's going to be collaboration, there's going to be community, there's going to be creativity. All the positive C words will be there. And I feel like that's where they'll also be learning, but with effortlessly. It will be in their natural form of, again, the technical side, the historical side, the community side, the generational side, all of the different elements. I can imagine it connects a lot of the dots. And that's what I kept feeling like there's this kind of woven together tapestry that's been pulled apart. And we're pretty close to weaving it back together through digital media. And, sharing that with the rest of the world is amazing because art is to be shared. It can be a very private and personal experience, but the only way you make it better, I feel like, is being able to be vulnerable enough with our arts. Yeah. And, being able to take and hear what people are really saying about it, or what may be people's perspective. And you don't have to take everybody's criticism into consideration. I also consider the source, like how valuable is what they're saying, what they're saying.
I have to say, I think, be willing to take it just is. Information simply just is. It's all around us all the time. Take what you want and leave the rest. And in that, be willing to consider and then decide, is it worthwhile to you? Does it help you? Is it growing you? Was it given in love, right? But be willing to consider and say, that's terrible for me. Or like, I wouldn't have thought about that. Or, that kind of hurts to hear. And there's some value there.
Sure.
Information just is. Don't make any of it too heavy on you. Simply just decide what you want to take in the next moment.
Take what you like and leave the rest.
And leave the rest.
Leave it on the cutting room floor. Yeah.
Knowing and believing you are amazing. You are beautiful. You are enough. You are intelligent. You are capable, and that you have confidence to create anything that you want to create. And that everything that you want to create, you have what you need right now.
100% nowism at its finest. This is very true. I am just so much into what you're saying because it puts new perspective on different ways that I see the world as well too. I always see opportunities and not obstacles. And if it's training your brain on how to see through a lens of things, right? If I'll tell you, some of the most motivated people in the world, if you see someone who's gone through it and you see someone who's, I don't care, I think I've seen a nature documentary, and this person knew plants and they were just automatically only looking for solutions. There's all these trees and plants and creatures and birds and everything else, and they were only looking for what was necessary for them out of that jungle and that scene and that situation of what was going to be that. I think it was like Alone is the TV show. And so Alone's a survivalist show, and I think in that rare form, it's much like that in our real world. It's through the lens of everything else. There's so many other infinite possibilities out there, but the answer is somewhere close by, and it could be right there in front of you.
It could be right. It could be right there in front of you. But the only way you'll know is if you know what you're looking for. That's that. Because
I don't know. I might disagree. Sometimes I have no idea. Sometimes I just have an idea of what.
That's knowing though.
Right there. Hold on.
You said you have an idea. You have
but I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know.
But you still have that idea.
The idea of possibility
actually gives a container for you to at least say, is this it? Is it not it? Maybe I could try it. Yeah. But if you don't have anything anchoring you at all,
there you go.
You could be walking past not just one, right? Because you'll always have more. 100%. But you could just be walking past exactly what you need, what you could utilize.
I can't tell you how many times I would be like, if that was a snake, that would have bit me. On the opportunities and the I think the solutions.
An idea is an idea.
It is. This is true. I'll give you that. I give you all of that, all of those. So now what do we do with a space and place like this? What do you think we need? Like, what type of people do we need to support this type of thing? I mean, because you're a creative. We want to inspire other creatives. We want to get all these people and different creatives in a media space and place. What do we need for something like this to take off, you think? I mean, because it doesn't exist, so we're just dreaming out loud.
Yeah, I think having a value proposition where people can see mutually beneficial opportunities in real time. So selling people on the vision of the future, I think, is essential. But I think selling them on what is like the possibility and the outcome that's beneficial right now. And some of that can even just be a feeling, right?
What are
people
are
motivated by feelings.
Yeah.
And what I mean is, like, so say a space like this, getting some of these creatives in the same room, and that's something that that I know you are looking at and you've been talking about putting together. Getting some creatives in the same room and letting them create some things, right? Having, like, you don't necessarily maybe need a $3 million fund, right? But just if you had a few $1,000, come on, put it out there.
Right.
Have a few $1,000s where you can get some creatives together and let them play. And passionate. I think you need people who are passionate. You need people who are passionate and people, even if they're not visionaries, everyone's not a visionary, okay? Just the same way everyone, on some level, they are a leader, but they don't need to lead everything, and they might not need to be the leader in that particular space. And so people who are willing to get into alignment with what the vision is, right? Get into alignment behind the visionary that has been chosen to be the lead visionary.
And I'm a shared collaborator.
Right.
Yeah, because it is a shared vision at the end of the day. If I create an island for myself with all the things I like, no one else is going to want to play. And I need it to be a shared space in order for it to be a community space, It's the only time it feels whole. But so what are some of the, I would say the values of this? I think of like the outcomes, and I'm just spitballing this back and forth with you, is, I think about like, the Googles that have been connected to Omaha now. They're like, it's right in our backyard. It's in our yard. I think the number right now is they're reinvesting like $7 billion. It's not a commercial. I'm just excited behind it. What I see though is I see the Googles, and I see the Metros, and I see the UNOs. I see the traditional institutions. I see kind of the tech companies. I see corporations and everyone else saying, gosh, we need innovation. Where do we get some innovation from? Where do we get some creativity from? Where do we get these next generation of leaders? And it takes agency. It takes that part of someone to where if you plug all these things in, the value added proposition is the output of where these youth will go in any career, because it may start here.
Well, you need diversity.
Right? You need the diversity, but it's also the iterations that you talk about too. Like I started as an engineer, and I am not an engineer. I'm an engineer or architect in different ways, and per se, but not in a traditional sense of that, from ideas.
Well, even what you just said, a space of experimentation.
There you go.
You need the space to try things out, to give it a go. And it's really important when you talk about innovation that you have the conversation about experimentation, and you have the conversation about failure and getting very comfortable with failure. And that is something that a lot of people may not want to
It's
hear.
a part of the process.
But if you think about yourself as a scientist,
man,
right? If you think about yourself as a scientist, I don't think, if you imagine yourself as a scientist and you're coming up with something great, you probably don't think the first time you run an experiment, you got it all figured out.
You got it all figured out.
You got it all. It's all, you have come up with something that the world has never seen on your first try. I don't even think you expect that. I think you expect that you're going to put some different chemicals in, and then some stuff is just going to, when you're going to, all right, did nothing.
We cured COVID on one try.
It's the same thing with life, right? But it's absolutely true when you're talking about being innovative, pushing a boundary, creating something new, is you got to try some things out and see what lands. And so what does that mean for a space like agency? One, it's in that space of funding. Okay. You need funding when you're talking about this. And I think sometimes people are way too comfortable with the idea of a starving artist. We got to talk about that. And so with the funding of like also getting people who are in alignment with the vision, who are willing to give, if you're talking about agency, willing to give a high level of freedom for experimentation, and understanding that sometimes it can take a little while to find your voice. That's part of how it goes. And I think having a space that is just absolutely filled with play, filled with play, filled with joy. And I like to think that that kind of stuff grows because we need more of it in our communities. We need more of it in our cultures. We need more of it in our society, including the world. People need more joy and more peace and more wholeness and a sense of unity. And so I think if you are creating pieces that speak to these things, you are naturally going to start building momentum. I gotta say, you've hit all the buttons. There's probably some more, but of course, there's always more.
We're gonna have to come for a round 2.
Okay.
And I just can't thank you enough for taking a minute. Yeah, because this is deep. So this is only the tip of the iceberg. And it's just mind blowing. And I thank you so much for taking some time out and for sharing the joy that you do. And we'll put all our socials on there and everything. Yeah. And we got a lot more to talk about.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for any and everyone who is underneath the sound of my voice. Please, please, please remember, you are worthy of experiencing a beautiful life, even right now. You deserve it. You deserve it. Should you want to reach out to me for a plethora of things, you can find me. My company is called Joy Brings Light. My website is joybringslight.com. Again, that's joybringslight.com. I believe in you. I support you. I hope that your dreams come true.
Yes. Thank you so much, Joy.
Yes.